My name is Heidi Veluw. I'm with the Business Link in Edmonton. And thank you everybody for coming today. We have quite a crowd in Edmonton here. We have around 34 people. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we work with rural connectivity and the SuperNet. And so I work at a place called the Business Link. And the Business Link is a place that has information services and educational services for the business entrepreneur for across Alberta. So we have a lot of services that are free. They either come to you via video conference through our education sessions. What I'm holding up now is our brochure, and this goes to addresses across Alberta. But what we work with is community futures offices, and we offer around 120 different educational sessions on different topics for the business entrepreneur. So what we call our video conference network is called the ELC Entrepreneurship Learning Center, okay? And that is basically with the 27 community futures offices. So we have 35 points across Alberta that we share our education sessions with. They start in Edmonton, so we do all the content development and we do all the technical support. Here's a map of our sites. The 27 charter members are community futures officers. We have 8 associate members, and those are groups like Three Hills, so Kevin Edwards and his crew up there, Hannah, places like that. And our expansion strategy for the ELC network is using the SuperNet. And so every charter member, which is a community futures office, can have a child site or an associate site, which we are picking throughout the province. So every community futures picks another site so that this educational content can be extended. So why video conferencing here? Our mandate here at the Business Link is to have a provincial reach. And so on average per session, we have from 20 to 90 people showing up at a video conference session. We average 2 to 4 sessions a week, okay? And lots of times we can have up to 30 sites showing up per session. So what's happening here today on the screen is quite usual for us. Every day I'm in a time warp trying to get my speakers in front of the camera, talking to all the sites to technically support them, getting information out to all the sites, handouts, things like that. We download it off the internet, things like that, so that there's a good experience for the business entrepreneur wherever they are in Alberta. So it doesn't matter, I'm going to go back to my little picture. So it doesn't matter where you are. You can be in Two Hills, you can be in Vegreville, you can have 2 people there, you can have 20 people here. It levels the playing field of how we get business education information out there to the communities. So what's kind of unique is our network is actually IP-based. That means we actually use the internet. Our new sites, our associate sites, are through the SuperNet, okay? So that's a little bit different than a lot of organizations, and we collectively own this. So beyond working for the Business Link, I also work for all the community futures offices, reporting to them on collectively running a video conference network across Alberta. We use Tandberg equipment here, and so far we've had no failures. We do all our monitoring here. The only time we had a problem was when there was a flood in our basement here and the power went out. So it's pretty neat stuff. As we said, and as you're experiencing today, there's a lot to learn about video conference technology. So I'm watching and I'm thinking about the technical issues that we're having today. This is going pretty well. It's a lot of work, especially as a presenter, looking at that back screen, looking at 20 sites. Because what I'm seeing right now is 12. So as a presenter, especially when you're doing education sessions, you always have to think about how are you outreaching to those sites, right? How do you take a question from Three Hills, okay? This is voice-activated stuff, but we're just learning how to use it. And so there's a lot of great sharing we can do on the best way to engage your audience. I can tell you from experience, when people have a good video conference experience in an education session, they come back. They have a bad one, you have bad sound, and word of mouth spreads in that community, and they don't come back. And we need to work more and more with the SuperNet, with VC Alberta, and with the Business Link to look at how we engage communities, right? Because there's a lot of learning there. So Our challenge when we set this up was to find an economical way to do this. And you know, people always ask me, I rent this technology all the time, they're like, oh my God, we have to pay $100 an hour to rent your video conference point. This is how I frame the conversation with anybody looking at this technology. If you had a conference like today, and everybody had to drive to Edmonton, or fly, or all those good things, and take up hotel rooms, what would the cost be? So, using this technology, as we get better and better at it, the technology is quite economical. And the other thing that you can always promote with video conferences, it's green. So nobody drove that far today, okay? I think the other big thing to really think about is you're reaching everyone. Most points, there's a video conference point within an hour in Alberta. I bet that's the farthest away. There's some holes in our video conference world. There's some holes up north, and there's some holes in central Alberta that could use some video conferencing technology. But at this point, especially with more collaboration with the different telehealth or the school boards or what have you, you can probably reach anywhere. Okay, so 20 sites, that's barely nothing at this point. Which way am I going? So you know what, we were one of the early adopters of using a video conference technology. We started in 2004. We started with 6 sites. We are now at 35. We also video conference with all the community future offices in BC. So we have 48 sites there. We have 8 sites in Northwest Territories, and we have another 16 in Saskatchewan that we technically support. So, you know, there's video conferencing in Alberta, but just think about the future about sharing content, educational content, from a place like some of our sister offices like Small Business BC, who have more information about e-business than we do, okay? So really it's about a scheduling issue and logistics and remembering your time zones versus using the technology. So one of the things I want to talk about next is really creating a culture of use. So this today for me is a great example of showing people what this technology can do. And so kind of my mandate here is working more and more with people, working with my presenters that I get engaged to do our brown bag presentations on what's the best way to present. How can you make your PowerPoint look really appealing to the rest of the communities? We saw some PowerPoints that you can't quite see. So there's some real tricks to make it as ease of use for the consumer. And I guess the other thing, and we talked about that at some of the ag sessions, we did our second session with Alberta Agriculture, the Ag Info Center, last week. And what was really cool is seeing a bunch of farmers from across Alberta show up, so around 45 people, listen to Ted Nyberg from the Ag Info Center speak. And they were bringing issues up that was talked about by Dr. Sandra Honor today, which is how do we look at culling cattle out of our feedlots? So those kind of questions, getting those people engaged. I really rely on my community future sites, working with their communities, putting in the local newspaper to get people out via video conference. So those are great successes. Working with other people who have an educational mandate to put materials, seminars in place to reach out to the greater community. So, like I said, we do around 90 to 120 events a year. I also do video conference rentals. For example, our spring 2007 season, we had an audience of 2,251 people. Most of our users are outside of Edmonton. Okay? So that's neat stuff. I really believe how we set up our network is we are reaching the entrepreneur outside of the larger metro centers. We also have a guest advisor program here, where if you want to speak to a lawyer or an accountant or anything like that, you can call in via video conference from any of those sites and speak to a professional here in the city at both our Calgary and Edmonton offices. So how do I get all these people to volunteer? Because everybody in my brochure who speaks, and I'm working on that right now, getting 60 speakers to be lined up for February 2009. And, you know, it's government partners. So, you know, it's tax time, so I get the tax people coming out speaking about, you know, no matter what, you got to pay your taxes. One of our sessions coming up in the near future with Alberta Agriculture is keeping the tax man off the farm, which I think will be highly popular. Okay, so we get speakers from the private sector as well as government partners to speak.